pro-Palestine protests, of course, planned to overshadow Armistice Day this Saturday. They still haven't been called off, and now there are questions over whether people orchestrating these demos have actual ties to Hamas. We've learned that Mohammed Sawala, who founded one of the 6 groups planning to march this weekend, is in fact a former Hamas chief who led the terror group in the 80s, but was allegedly involved in masterminding their military strategy as recently as 2019. Joining me in the studio, as I say, is writer and broadcaster Emma Woolf. Emma, welcome to the new primetime Independent Republican Mike Graham. Great to see you.
Post 9 p.m.
Yes, absolutely right. I mean, we've
Get
still
the cocktails out.
Get the cocktails out. We may be having, you know, sort of a calendar of events going on over the course of leading up to Christmas, of course. We've got lots to do. But before we get even to this dreadful connection between Hamas and these protests, there's a bit of breaking news that I want to bring to everybody, because there's a boy of 15 who's been stabbed to death. Not in London this time, it's in Leeds, near a school. 2 teenagers have been arrested. It's a Horsforth School is the name of the place. The victim is a former pupil. Dozens of people have gathered for a candlelit vigil. He was attacked on a street just outside the school. He's thought to be a former pupil, but it just shows you, even as we saw the King's speech today and measures being allowed for to outlaw more of these knives, you know, another death, another teenager. It's just awful, isn't it?
This is barely months after Eliane Adams in Croydon was stabbed. This young man died this afternoon in hospital, stabbed at 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's just unthinkable. How and why are knives still available, and why are teenage boys carrying knives to school? Why do they think that they need that?
Yeah.
Why, you know, why can they buy them quite so
even
easily?
as so many of them are getting injured and having life-changing injuries and being killed. You know, so many killed in London this year, and yet they're still doing it. It seems incredible.
They're still doing it, and many, many investigations have shown just how easy it is, despite the government crackdown, despite what we heard today in the King's speech. You can go into, you know, supermarkets, corner shops, you can buy knives that are deadly. You can buy seriously big knives, and that should not be, they should not be available.
They really shouldn't. Whether they can get to banning them or not is another matter. But let's go back to the big weekend that's coming up, because we've been talking about little else really on talkTV over the last couple of days. Armistice weekend, you know, I'm assuming, I shouldn't ever assume your view, but I'm assuming that, like me, you think it would be incredibly unwise for these protests to go ahead. So far, the police have just said, we'd like to ask you to reconsider. A lot of MPs saying they should be banned. What do you think?
Mike, we have one weekend in this country that is dedicated. It's not a surprise that November the 11th is coming up. We've known about this. Everybody's known about this. The government knew about this. We have one weekend that is dedicated, that is sacred to the memory, to the commemoration, to the celebration of the armistice, but to the commemoration of people who gave their lives, my father, your father, grandfather, whatever, in the war. And this is classic Rishi Sunak drift. This is the government. If only he had taken the decision a couple of weeks ago, when it became clear that these Saturday protests were not going away, that they were very, very controversial, very distressing, and very threatening for many Jews.
And very divisive as well.
Very divisive and very threatening for many Jews in London and many people in London. If he had taken the decision then, it's not about banning anybody. It's about saying, not this weekend.
Yes.
You are not permitted to go into central London this weekend. Operationally, our police force, whatever it is, the Met Police can't cope with, you know, basic crime, let alone dealing with these protests and dealing with keeping the capital city safe. It's just, all it needed was Rishi Sunak to take that decision and to announce it. None of this nonsense from Suella Braverman about hate marches. No. If only he could have just got control and said, no, not that weekend.
Well, I mean, again, how is it that we've only just learned? It was only a few weeks ago the Sunday Times broke the story about this former Hamas chief who
living
lives
in
Colindale,
Barnet.
in
the
the borough of Barnet.
Epicenter of Jews in the UK.
Right. And he's got himself a council house. He came here under a false name. I think he used his brother's passport to gain entry.
He's been off to Moscow chatting with Putin's allies.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, he's probably been to Qatar to chat to them.
Is that the kind of guy that we want to give British passports to?
One, he shouldn't be here at all. But two, the fact that he's now being linked with the organisation of these protests would surely suggest that, hang on a minute, if you're involved with Hamas, if you've got links to Hamas and you're organising a protest, then I'm sorry, that makes that protest illegal, doesn't it?
Of course it makes that protest illegal.